Professor Watson, you are an active researcher in the field of communication measurement and evaluation. In your opinion, what are currently the three most important challenges in this area for the scientific community as well as practitioners?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the first one that's really upon us and we're struggling to work with is the challenge of measuring social media. The speed of movement, the sheer variety of it, the rise and fall of particular channels like MySpace was very popular 3 or 4 years ago. 3 years ago, Facebook was only a college student phenomenon in the United States. Now everyone's using it. How do we measure it? How do we understand the value that it's creating? How do we understand the way that it transmits messages when the speed of movement is so great? It's an absolute paradigm shift that we're looking at. It's so different from the newspaper that was printed and you had 24 hours to look at it before the next one came along. Even radio, there's an hour between most radio broadcasts, and the same with television. So it's a big challenge. The second is that despite all the work that we've done over many years on PR evaluation and measurement, we still have a lot of practitioners who don't undertake evaluation on a regular basis, and I think that's something that we must continue to promote, that it's in their interest and in the interest of their client or their organisation. And the final one, and it's the one that probably worries me most, is that despite a lot of research, the advertising value equivalent measurement is still the most widely used measure. I know why, because it seems to be a very simple measure, but because it's simple doesn't mean that it's accurate, and it's for generations now it's been misleading people, and the quicker it goes the better.
Yes. So your career covered public relations in international public relations in Australia and the UK, and now you're a professor of public relations at Bournemouth University in England.
Yeah.
So from a European perspective, where do you see differences between in the scientific and practical approaches of communication measurement and evaluation to Australia and especially to the US?
Okay. Well, I'm lucky in a way that I now move between both the European and the Anglo-American culture. And I tend to put the Anglo-American together, whether you add the UK, North America, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, have very similar methods of undertaking public relations. In Europe, there's been a different, lot more sociological approach over time. So what we're seeing is now quite a rise in the influence of Europe, and in particular the work on discussion, the work on the measurement of organisational communication, the communication controlling work that Professor Zerfas has been doing here at Leipzig. I think that's been very important. Communication scorecards have developed from an American phenomenon, which was the notion of balanced scorecard, the Kaplan and Norton book from the mid-90s. And it's been brought into Europe and adapted into the operation of European businesses in a way that is different from possibly the Kaplan and Norton original, and I think it does give far greater management of communication and a far greater indication of the contribution that communication makes to organisational objectives, and that's a really important change. So I think Europe is leading the way at present. And the European Measurement Summit in Berlin in June 2009 showed how very important the work by practitioners, media analysis companies and academics in Europe were making to the whole science of measurement of communication.
Yes, yes. I would also like to ask a question concerning the ongoing debate around PR ROI as a return on investment, especially regarding the terminology. What do you think of the term? Should it be used in communication measurement?
Well, I did some research in the middle of the last decade which found that return on investment was not a term used in academic literature. In fact, I think I found only one reference into a very large study of literature. That doesn't mean it's not being used by practitioners. And in practice, it's become a rather problematic summarizing of business language. Because in business, return on investment literally means the financial return that you make on the capital employed. So if you build a factory, you spend capital to build it and you expect a return on it. In public relations, much of our work is not financially driven. It seeks to contribute to the organisation, but most importantly, it's about building mutually satisfactory relationships. Now, these are really important for the operation of the organisation, and it may be very important for its relationship with regulators, with stakeholders, with communities. But it enables the organisation to work better and to work in a more ethical way and a more knowledgeable way. But it doesn't always contribute hard financial outcomes. So that's the problem with ROI as a term. When we mention it to business management, they think there is a financial outcome that can be determined, but the reality is, in most cases, it isn't. So I think we are stuck with ROI. It's with us, and what we have to do is explain it in terms of the value that public relations contributes to the organisation in non-financial methods. And over time, we can find alternative words that we can work into the business lexicon.
Okay. So maybe one last question. What do you think will be the most important future developments in the field of communication measurement and evaluation?
Well, I sort of flagged them earlier. I think the ability to measure social media contemporaneously is really a challenge for us. I mean, the effect that a Twitter storm can have, the way that a story can be picked up, transmitted to many, many hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of people in a very short time, and to understand the impact and the progress of that message is something that's a real challenge. The way to do it, I'm afraid, is a very big brother model with all sorts of ethical problems, where you have very powerful computers and you have very powerful software, which means that it's reading everything to find out relatively small amounts of information. Ethically, that's going to be difficult, but it's probably one of the few ways that we're going to measure things. The other challenge to the whole measurement evaluation sector really is about us getting planning, research and evaluation into the professional DNA, that it's built into us. It's not something that we occasionally do, but we actually use it to design programs to and measure them in a way that is just part of the absolutely the natural way that we do our work. At present, is still seen by too many people as an add-on rather than as a central core issue. So they're the two big issues. How do we measure social media as it gets faster and faster and more diffuse? And the second thing is, how do we get practitioners to apply the knowledge that many of them have learnt through their studies, and for which all over the world we see public relations organisations running education programs about. So that's a challenge for the practitioners themselves.
Okay, thank you very much for the interview.
Okay, thank you.